Hello, my name is Lowell Bliss, and today we're at the Konza Prairie near my hometown of Manhattan, Kansas. I bet you thought that Kansas was flat. But there's a lot of surprises in this world, as any missionary could tell you. The tall grass prairie is one of the most important ecosystems in the world. The prairie used to cover 140 million acres across North America. Today, less than 4% of that remains, most of it right here in the Kansas Flint Hills. The world is changing, whether it be the grasslands of the Central Plains, the tropical rainforest of the Amazon, the melting glaciers of the Himalayas, coastal erosion, biodiversity loss, and of course rising average global temperatures. The world is changing, and so must the way the church does missions. My wife and I were missionaries in India and Pakistan for 14 years, and now we're the directors of the Eden Vigil, an environmental missions organization. An environmental missionary is someone who is sent cross-culturally to labor with Christ, the creator, sustainer, and redeemer of all creation, in taking care of the environment and in making disciples among all peoples. Now, being sent cross-culturally, that's the traditional definition of missions. But to understand that Jesus is the creator, sustainer, redeemer of all creation is to open up our understanding to the fullness of what Christ has purchased at the cross. This is what the Lausanne movement calls the whole gospel. So environmental missions takes that gospel-preaching, disciple-making, church-planting model of missions and combines it with environmental development, or what the church is calling creation care. Environmental missions lives at the point of that integration. Is environmental missions a new category of missions? Well, no, not really. William Carey sailed for India in 1793, and he's considered the father of modern, or the father of Protestant, missions. He was also a world-class botanist. Among his many accomplishments, he co-founded the Indian Horticultural and Agricultural Society, an organization that still exists and is still blessing India. The church has known generations of faithful missionaries who've labored in such areas as sustainable agriculture, water development, reforestation. At Eden Vigil, we say that they've served with a Bible in one hand and a shovel in another. But if environmental missions is not a new category of missions, there's nonetheless benefit in thinking of it as so, or promoting it as such. Because we live in a time of unprecedented environmental need, unprecedented opportunity for the gospel, and also an unprecedented call for environmental missions. I won't say much about the unprecedented environmental need beyond what you have read yourself already in the headlines. But as for opportunity, and speaking now as a missionary, I am convinced that environmental issues, including global climate change, represent the greatest opportunity to preach the gospel, make disciples, plant churches among least reached people groups in our generation. At Eden Vigil, we call it doing environmental missions at the point of love. To meet people with Christ's love at the point of their suffering and need, but also to gauge Christ's love in our own hearts and confront what the Cape Town Commitment has called the idolatry of consumerism. Environmental missions can open hearts. It can also open borders. So many countries, whether Muslim or Buddhist, Hindu, East Asian, are antagonistic to traditional missionary endeavor. But they're making an open appeal for environmental partnerships. In October 2010, over 4,200 evangelical leaders from 198 countries gathered together in Cape Town, South Africa for the third Lausanne Congress on World Evangelization. Among the many things that they took under consideration, and among the many things that have appeared in their covenant, what they call the Cape Town Commitment, is an unprecedented call for creation care and environmental missions. The commitment says, "Love for God's creation demands that we repent of our part in the destruction, waste, and pollution of the earth's resources, and our collusion in the toxic idolatry of consumerism. Instead, we commit ourselves to urgent and prophetic ecological responsibility. We support Christians whose particular missional calling is to environmental advocacy and action." What or who is Eden Vigil? Eden Vigil is an environmental missions initiative launched by Christar in 2008. We exist to do 5 things. We promote the category of environmental missions. We mobilize environmental missionaries. We facilitate environmental missions projects worldwide. We provide training for environmental missionaries. And we connect on-field missionaries with creation care expertise. Well, how can you be involved? Well, I would welcome you to www.edenvigil.org. And there at the website, I'd particularly like to introduce you to the Environmental Missions Prayer Digest. This is a free monthly e-letter in which we highlight just a couple of prayer requests about environmental missions projects around the world. For instance, in a recent issue, we highlighted Bhutan, a nation which Operation World calls one of the least evangelized in the world. Glacial melt, unseasonal glacial melt blamed on climate change, is threatening their plans for hydroelectric power development. It's also creating high-altitude lakes, which are endangering the villages which are down below. But then, let's consider together what it means for you to take a Bible in one hand and a shovel in another. Doing environmental missions at the point of love is going to look different for everybody. But the whole church needs to be mobilized, and mobilized at this moment of unprecedented environmental need, unprecedented opportunity, and of course with the unprecedented call as well. I'd love to meet you out on the Kansa Prairie outside on a beautiful fall day, but let's meet at www.edenvigil.org. Thank you.